We're here speaking with Jeremiah Lowery, candidate for the D.C. Council at Large seat. Welcome, Mr. Lowery.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're
It's a great honor.
welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hmm.
So, just jump right in. And I
Absolutely.
know part of your background, you are an environmentalist.
Hmm.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. Well, I'm on the board of the DC Sierra Club.
Mm-hmm.
While on the board of the DC Sierra Club, I started the first Environmental Justice Committee
Okay.
for the club. So
Impressive.
now the club has a concentration looking at ways to improve the environment in low-income communities, and
Mm-hmm.
especially low-income communities of color.
Absolutely.
So
And so, in this role as council member, if elected to serve as at large, what would that mean in terms of legislative work, or even programming or initiatives that you wish to implement within the district?
absolutely. One would be one of my top priorities is energy.
Okay.
I would love to push the DC government to come up with a plan to push our city towards a 100% renewable energy city,
Mm-hmm.
which would lower carbon pollution in DC,
Mm-hmm.
as well as lower our energy bills
Okay.
here in the district. Because, we have a lot of high energy bills in here in DC.
We do.
And so
Yes,
I
we
would
do.
love to look at ways to lower our energy bills.
Okay.
I will also look at ways to improve the air quality, especially in communities in Ward 5 around the Rhode Island Avenue
Is
area.
that a concern? Should that
They have
be
the
an
highest
area
rates of
focus?
cancer, actually. Breast
Ah,
cancer,
okay.
highest rates of colon cancer, highest rates of lung cancer
Mm-hmm.
than anywhere else in the city right now. And it has a lot to do because it's an industrial area. And a
Interesting.
lot of the residents have been complaining for years about it.
Okay.
And so I want to look at ways to improve that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a few years ago, we had a problem with lead in the water
Mm-hmm.
in our public school system,
Okay.
especially east of the river, and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of our schools east of the river.
Mm-hmm.
I want to look at ways to modernize all our schools
Mm-hmm.
so we can eliminate lead in the water,
Mm-hmm.
as well as have schools that are state of the art in all parts of the city.
Interesting.
And I will also look at ways where we can continue to, the progress we made on improving the Anacostia River, as well as I would love to expand Marion Barry's summer youth job program to include a year-round green jobs program for our youth, especially youth east of the river.
Okay, and let's stay there. That is amazing. In talking about economics, so apart from the youth and your idea of implementing the green jobs, what about some of the other opportunities that you will provide to young professionals or even seniors that are, turning that page? They're entering that next chapter that want to continue working. What would that look like, and what type of support would you provide?
Absolutely. Well, one thing I would love to quickly mention is if we were to push DC to 100% renewable energy city, we would create thousands and thousands of jobs, particularly in the clean energy sector,
Okay.
solar power.
Okay.
And I would love to really push the DC government to ensure that a lot of those jobs are going to returning citizens who have a very high unemployment rate in DC,
Okay.
as well as a lot of those jobs going to youth east of the river,
East of the river.
who are within their 18 to 32 who are chronically unemployed. I would love to see a lot of those jobs go to them,
Okay.
as well as I would love to see if we were to have a green jobs program for youth in the city. I would love to see a senior component where seniors are able to mentor a lot of the youngsters. So we can, especially seniors who are retired.
Okay.
They can play a role.
Like an intergenerational approach.
Intergenerational approach to our jobs program where seniors are able to contribute as well.
Okay.
So,
And of course, with jobs, you can't go without mentioning housing. What's your perspective and your vision to assist with the level of displacement of residents here in the city?
Absolutely. I think displacement is the #1 issue here in Washington, D.C. right now. We have a lot of folks being displaced, a lot of African American seniors being displaced here in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of different policy ideas when it comes to preventing displacement. One thing I would love to see is redevelopment in place
Okay.
law, which states that anytime you redevelop low-income housing or public housing, you must replace those units one-to-one, as well as the district government must find a funding mechanism to ensure those residents are able to stay in DC until their units are replaced. so we can prevent displacement here in D.C. I would love to see us also strengthen our rent control laws.
Okay.
Right now, there's a lot of loopholes in our rent control laws.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I also do is hold a lot of developers accountable.
Okay.
A lot of developers in the city don't actually, they're not really held accountable to meeting their affordable housing goals.
Mm-hmm.
They make deals with the D.C. government
Yes.
to build low-income housing,
Yes.
build affordable housing, and sometimes they renege on those deals.
Mm-hmm.
There's no accountability.
Okay.
So I would love to look at legislative measures
Mm-hmm.
to hold those developers accountable.
Okay. And I wanted to ask, in terms of housing and talking about employment, what about childcare? That can be very expensive, for families, whether you're a single mom or even if it's a two-parent, home. And in some cases, seniors are now caring for their grandchildren. What would you put in place, or what program expansions, could you think of that would help to alleviate that pressure?
Absolutely. So I've been working on child care policy and legislation for the past 6 years now.
Okay.
Right now, D.C. has the most unaffordable child care system in the United States.
Interesting.
There just was a report released that showed that on average, child care for parents is $36,000 a year.
Wow.
Which is number one, the most expensive in the United States.
Okay.
So there are a lot of parents who don't have access to high quality care, especially a lot of parents east of the river. So the first thing I'm going to do, if elected, will be to introduce legislation to direct the D.C. government to come up with a plan to extend out universal pre-K to cover 0 to 3, so all our parents in Washington, D.C. can have access to high quality care.
Okay. And one last question. I was intrigued about a comment that you made in an article about the pay to play. Tell me real quick about what you mean by that.
Absolutely. I think one of the reasons why we're in the situation we're in right now is because there are a lot of moneyed interests who get subsidies, big contracts, and they build luxury. A lot of big developers who donate to political candidates. Once those candidates are elected, they give subsidies and our public dollars to them so they can build luxury condos where folks have to pay $23,000 a month on hand. And I think one of the reasons why we don't have affordable housing, one of the reasons why we don't have increased funding for child care, it's because our priorities are being blocked because I believe council members are more focused on pleasing political donors than they do actual district residents. And so if elected, I'm going to really fight really hard to end pay to play in Washington, D.C.
Okay. And lastly, why should people vote for you?
Absolutely. Well, I was born and raised here in Washington, D.C. My mom and my dad were both born and raised here in Washington, D.C. My mom spent a portion of her life in a homeless shelter here in D.C. My dad worked as a security guard. Growing up, he didn't have access to child care. I have two brothers who are in and out of the prison system here in D.C. And the reason why I'm running is because there are a lot of family members who are going through the same issues that my family has faced. And I believe that I could be the transformative candidate that really changes things around, that really focuses on east of the river, that really focuses on some of the systemic problems that are facing district residents. If you look at my platform, if you look at my website, Jeremiah 2018, I've been fighting for a lot of these issues that I've been talking about for over a decade now. And I want to continue that journey on the district council.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So don't go anywhere. 1 second. Thank you for joining us. Good luck on your campaign, and we'll be back.